Welcome to Toy Polloi.
Hello and welcome to Toy Polloi. Now at a recent toy fair I picked up a vintage 12-inch Stormtrooper from General Mills released in 1978, and this is the first of the 12-inch figures I've ever owned. I've been collecting Star Wars for a long time and I've never bothered to pick up any 12-inch figures. I saw this, it was on sale for £20, but I knocked the guy down to 12 because if you turn it round you can see just how yellow and awful the back of him is. But I reckon that with a bit of TLC that we can get this Stormtrooper looking quite nice again. So in this video I'm going to do a bit of a restoration job on this 12-inch Stormtrooper and we'll see how nice we can get him to look. Now I've already washed this figure because when I picked it up at the toy fair it was really dirty, so I gave it a really good wash in some hot soapy water and used a toothbrush to clean out all the sort of awkward and fiddly areas all over the figure to get as much of the dirt out as I could. Overall the figure is in not too bad a condition. It has a few little marks on it which we can get off with lighter fluid later on, and a few little marks on his legs there. You can see there's a bit of a sort of a darker mark which looks like it's sort of a sticky residue. But the worst problem on him is if we turn him over you can see he's pretty much gone yellow. It's a real nicotine stained yellow and all of the screws on the back have rusted through. But on the positive sides it's all complete, nothing is broken, there's no cracks. There's only a tiny amount of paint wear on his feet there, the bottom of his feet, and not much else is wrong with him. So really first thing to do is to take him apart. We're going to unscrew him. These screws we can try and clean up, and then we'll drop the rest of his body in some hydrogen peroxide 6%, leave that in the sun for a short while, and we'll see how much of this yellowing we can remove. I have a feeling we'll get it looking a bit better. It's never going to be perfect, this one, because the staining is pretty serious, but it shouldn't end up looking too bad. So let's get him in pieces. So I've got a screwdriver here. Hopefully these screws are going to come undone. They're quite rusted, so it may take a bit of effort. Yeah, they're really rusted. Let's see if any of these others move. Oh, there we go. Yeah, they're pretty rusted in, so it's going to be quite hard work to get these out, but it shouldn't be impossible. So as you can see there, that's the first screw out. Pretty rusty. I think we can clean that up a bit. Let me get to work on the rest of these and we'll see what the figure is like on the inside. Now I've removed all the screws, we can gently prise the body apart. I thought it might come apart easily, but it isn't going to, so I'm going to just insert a screwdriver and gently twist. See if we can open this body up. It really doesn't want to come. So with a bit of prizing I've actually started to manage to get this figure apart. As you can see, it's not just screwed together, there are pegs as well that fit into holes, much like some of the vehicles. So I think it is just going to be a case of carefully prizing this open a little bit at a time, and hopefully he'll pop apart and we won't break any of the holding pegs. But it's proving to be slightly more awkward than I would imagine. I thought it would just unscrew, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's really pretty awkward to do. Right, it's starting to come apart. As you can see here, it's a case of sort of gently wiggling it. There we go. There we have the two halves apart. So that is actually a lot more awkward than you would imagine. And you do have to remember there is a bit of string here which is used to hold the gun on the side, and that is hooked around a couple of bits on the inside. So when we come to put this back together, we've got to remember that this bit of string needs to go on the inside here. But otherwise it's a fairly simple construction toy. You can see you've just got separate arms here. Let's remove the other arm, and then the legs likewise just hook into place. So now that this is apart, this should make it a lot easier to sort out and to de-yellow. And also, now that this is all in pieces, as you can see here, you can see just how bad the yellowing is. The front of it is not too bad, but if you compare it to the back, it's pretty terrible. So I think we're going to have to do quite a lot of work to get this looking nice, but I'm hopeful that we could get it looking good. The insides, as you can see, are pretty reasonable. If I show you an inside to the back there, yeah, it's a pretty yellowed figure. For de-yellowing the figure, I'm going to use my standard method, which is hydrogen peroxide 6%, and you can pick this up from Boots or most sort of chemists here in the UK. You can also buy it online, but I find the stuff that you can get from the chemist just as good, and it costs about 99p for 300 millilitres of stuff. So here I have a plastic sort of, lunchbox thing. This is not quite big enough actually, so I'm just going to have to do this in a few goes, but I can fit quite a few pieces in here. I can fit the whole of the body and at least one of the arms in. So I think I'll do one sort of portion at a time, and then do the legs and the other arm as a separate pass. So it's going to take slightly longer to do, but really time is not a problem. Just put it out in the sun for a few days and we'll see how white that we can get this. As I've said before, I don't think it's going to get particularly white, but it certainly should look an awful lot better than it does at the moment. To remove the rust from these screws, the easiest way is to use some white vinegar. Again, you can pick this up at most supermarkets. This is Sarson's vinegar. Buy quite a large bottle of this, it doesn't cost a great deal. I'm going to put a small amount into a little plastic pot here, just because you don't need a great deal of it, like so. And then I'm going to drop these screws into this vinegar and leave those for a few hours, and that should remove the rust from them, and they will be pretty good and almost as good as new by the time that that's all done. It's been 4 days now since I put these first bits into the hydrogen peroxide, and they've come out remarkably well. I wasn't expecting the sort of yellow staining to go that white, because obviously it was a quite badly stained figure, but actually if you look at this, it's starting to go quite a nice colour. Now if I bring in a piece that I haven't de-yellowed, like this arm here, and hold it against the back, which was exactly the same colour, you can see that this piece is still horridly yellow, and the back is not too bad. It's obviously still got a yellow tinge to it. I'm never going to be able to get this particularly white, but it's certainly an awful lot better than the arm here. I'll bring in a leg as well, because the legs were quite bad. You can see there's quite sort of a remarkable difference there between the two. So let's have one final look. You can see these two arms. Actually, the two arms are probably the best way of looking. One on the left is obviously the one that I haven't done, and one on the right has been done. So it certainly looks an awful lot better. So I'm now going to put these last few bits in, and we'll get these as white as we can as well. I've now managed to get all the bits de-yellowed as much as they're going to sort of go back to white, and as you can see, it's not a bad end result compared to how it started. The very sort of nicotine-y yellow colour has gone. The worst bits still are the back of the Stormtroopers, you can see here, which has still got a yellow tinge to it. It's not quite as sort of good as I'd hoped it would go, but it's certainly a lot better than it was originally. As you can see, the front actually doesn't look too bad. So I think overall this is really about as good as it's ever going to get, and I think it's certainly a sort of a displayable figure now in this sort of colour. To be honest, I don't actually mind the yellowing on these figures. I think it makes them sort of gives them a little bit more character, so I'm going to leave that as is now. Next thing to do is to touch up some of the paintwork. Now most of the paint on this figure is pretty good. There's only a few little marks, as you can see here. There's one little scuff mark on the back of the knee there, and a few around the bottom of the feet. Otherwise the paint seems pretty good. There's not too much sort of scuffing even on the ears of the Stormtrooper, and the stuff on the back looks pretty nice. So we'll go ahead and we'll sort out some paint, and then we can put this guy back together. For the paint on this figure, it's not really gloss and it's not really matte. It's a sort of halfway house between. As you can see on the bottom, it does look quite gloss, but actually on the wrist it's a fairly matte finish. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix two types of paint together. Now these are both humble paints. On the left here we have number 21, which is a gloss finish acrylic paint, and on the right we have number 33, which is a matte finish black paint, again acrylic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix those two together. So I've got a bit of gloss here, I'm going to mix that with a bit of the matte, like so, and hopefully this should give us a sort of a halfway house finish, not too glossy, not too matte. So just a little bit of mixing of those two. We should get something that works quite nicely. And then it's just a case of carefully painting where the little scuff marks are on this boot and on the back of the figure. Now that the paint's all dry, we can go ahead and put this guy back together. Most of it's pretty straightforward because it's just a case of slotting in the limbs into the various slots. You know, it's pretty obvious. Left leg goes in the left hole, right leg goes in the right hole. But the last thing that you do have to remember to do is to put in the holster string, which I have here. As you can see, this is a small bit of string that the gun fixes onto when it's not in the Stormtrooper's hand. Now, if you remember when I took this apart, this little bit of string was hooked over these two posts in the front section of the Stormtrooper. It's not a particularly long bit of string, and it's just some slightly sort of thick black cotton, so nothing that amazing. So if you need to replace it, it's pretty easy to do. So we'll slot that over there. Then you've got to sort of pull it to one side, the right hand side of the Stormtrooper, like so. And then if we drop the back on, oops, one of his arms has fallen out, like so. So let's drop the back on. We won't push this into place fully at the moment, because what we've got to do is turn this over, as you can see here, so we can make sure these two little bits of string come through these two slots on the side. So if I pull this down like so, that should be fine. And you can still see that it's hooked over the two posts on the inside. Now we can start to squeeze the body of the Stormtrooper back together, making sure all the posts fit in like so, and that bit of string is now still there and comes out of those two gaps. Now all we've got to do is to screw him together. So I'll get the screws that I cleaned in vinegar. These actually turn out quite nicely, so I can just slot those in place, and we'll get him all screwed firmly back together. And so here is the finished figure. I'll try and do a split screen at this point to show you what he looked like before and what he looks like now, because obviously from the front he's looking pretty good. He's a fairly white Stormtrooper. If we turn him round, you can see that he's still got a little bit of yellowing to him, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was when I first started working on him. There's not a lot you can do to get rid of the really extreme yellowing on something like this. You can remove it quite a bit, but it's never going to get back to being perfectly white. But overall, I'm really happy with how this guy turned out. He's certainly a lot more displayable than he was when I picked him up from the toy fair, and for only £12 I'm really pleased with him. Hopefully I'll be able to find a few more of these as I sort of do my toy travelling and that, and start to build up an army of these larger 12-inch Stormtroopers. I recently picked up one of the larger Jakks Pacific Stormtroopers that you can get. I think these are about 18 inches tall, so as you can see it still towers over the top of the vintage 12-inch Stormtrooper there. But I actually quite like the Jakks Pacific ones because they're constructed in a similar way to the vintage ones, so they have very limited articulation, just being able to rotate the arms and legs, and the gun is actually welded into the hand, which means you never lose it. So I do quite like the big ones, but really my heart is with vintage, so I think I was going to start buying more of the Jakks Pacific ones, but I think I'll stick with trying to get some of the more the smaller vintage 12-inch figures. One thing I wasn't able to find was a replacement gun for him. I've been looking around. Now the prices on eBay are a bit crazy for original ones. I have found one place that sells a reproduction one, which I think I probably will go for in the end, but I just haven't ordered it so far, as postage from the States to the UK is a little bit crazy, so I'll wait until there's a few more bits that I need, and at that point I will stump up and I'll get myself a replacement gun for this, because I'm not that fussed whether it's an original or a repro, and I think on such a sort of battered toy, a repro gun is going to look pretty nice. So there you go, that's my restoration of a vintage Star Wars 12-inch Stormtrooper. I hope that's been of interest to everyone, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow Toy Polloi on Twitter and Facebook.